Johnny Depp's last words about Amber Heard have just leaked, and they're not what anyone expected. This isn't some anonymous source or tabloid rumor. This came from someone who was there when Johnny finally broke down, when he realized the truth everyone had been trying to tell him for years. What he said in that private moment wasn't angry or vengeful. It was heartbreak mixed with regret, the kind that only comes when you finally understand how deeply you ignored the people who loved you most. It happened months after the Virginia trial ended, when Johnny thought the world had finally stopped talking about him. He was in a quiet place, far away from the cameras and microphones, believing the chaos had ended. But someone who was in the room when he spoke said the way he talked about Amber wasn't the way he used to. It wasn't about defending her anymore. It was about realizing that everyone who had tried to protect him had been right all along. And when Johnny finally said the words, "I should have listened to everyone," you could tell it came from a man who had lost more than a marriage. He had lost trust in himself. To understand why that confession hit so hard, you have to go back to the beginning. Back to 2012, when Johnny Depp met Amber Heard on the set of The Rum Diary. It was supposed to be just another film, another co-star. But something about Amber drew him in immediately. She was young, beautiful, intelligent, and bold. To the outside world, they looked like a perfect match, a rock star actor and a rising starlet. But to the people who knew Johnny best, it didn't feel right from the start. Vanessa Paradis, Johnny's partner of 14 years and the mother of his children, reportedly felt something was off the very first time she met Amber. Vanessa had never been the jealous type. She'd watched Johnny work with some of the most beautiful actresses in Hollywood and never once seemed worried. But with Amber, it was different. She told close friends she had a bad feeling, a sense that this woman wasn't who she pretended to be. And those quiet concerns, dismissed at the time as just protective instincts, would come back years later like echoes Johnny couldn't ignore. Johnny's sister, Christy, was another who saw through the charm early. She had been with him through everything, his rise to fame, his struggles, his long relationships. She managed his finances and often acted as his unofficial advisor. Multiple people close to the family said Christy had warned Johnny in 2013 and 2014 that Amber seemed more interested in what Johnny represented than who he was. She told him that Amber studied people, learned their weaknesses, and adapted to get what she wanted. But Johnny brushed it off. He believed love was supposed to be all in. He thought everyone else just didn't understand her. Even Johnny's longtime friends, the people who had been with him since the early days of his career, grew concerned. They didn't see the same easygoing, grounded Johnny they used to know. He started missing projects, isolating himself, and prioritizing Amber's comfort over his own peace of mind. Some of them tried to talk to him. Others went through Christy or Vanessa, hoping someone could reach him. His lawyers even warned him to be careful when he started talking about changing his will to include Amber after just 2 years together. It wasn't romantic advice. They were protecting him. But love makes people deaf, and Johnny wasn't listening. The signs were everywhere, but he refused to see them. On movie sets, Amber reportedly appeared uninvited, keeping an eye on who Johnny spoke to. Crew members noticed how she seemed to hover, making passive-aggressive comments to female staff. His makeup artist, Joe Harlow, who had worked with Johnny for years, allegedly pulled him aside and told him, "This isn't normal." But again, Johnny brushed it off. He thought the intensity meant passion. He thought it was love. Even his own security team saw what was happening. Malcolm Connolly, who had protected Johnny for years, documented several incidents where Amber became verbally aggressive when Johnny didn't answer her calls. She would show up at his properties unannounced, demanding access. The guards thought they were protecting him from paparazzi, but more often they were protecting him from his own life. And perhaps the most painful warning of all came from his daughter, Lily Rose Depp. She was only 16 when she told her father she didn't feel comfortable around Amber. That should have been the moment Johnny stopped and listened. But he didn't. He told his daughter she was wrong. All those warnings from people who loved him the most were ignored. And years later, when Johnny finally admitted they were all right, it wasn't just a confession. It was the sound of a man realizing how much he'd lost by trying to prove everyone else wrong. The moment that broke him came not after the divorce, not after the trial, but during the marriage itself. It was December 2015, 5 months after their wedding. Johnny was recovering from the infamous finger injury in Australia, while Amber was overseas. She had left behind one of her devices, something small, easily forgotten. But when Johnny went through it, he found messages that changed everything. They weren't love notes. They were conversations between Amber, her sister Whitney, and her friend Rocky Pennington. The messages discussed the plan and how everything was working perfectly. They mentioned Johnny's weaknesses and how to push the right buttons. Reading those words, Johnny said he felt like the world stopped because he recognized the language. They were the same phrases his sister Christy had warned him about years earlier. She had told him, Amber studies people, she learns how to control them. And now, Johnny was seeing those exact words in black and white. According to the source who was there when he opened up about it later, Johnny said quietly, I could hear Christy's voice saying those words as I read them. It was like watching my own nightmare play out in real time. That was the moment denial cracked. The moment he realized every warning had been right. He reportedly told his friend, I should have listened to everyone. They saw what I couldn't see because I didn't want to see it. It wasn't bitterness, it was recognition. He hadn't just been blinded by love, he had been trapped by pride. After that realization, everything that came next, every fight, every headline, every court appearance, just confirmed what his loved ones had said years earlier. The psychologist who evaluated Amber during the Virginia trial, Dr. Shannon Curry, described traits that matched everything Johnny's friends had noticed long before. Manipulation, control, image management. Even Johnny's financial records told the same story. Within months of marriage, Amber had gained access to his accounts, made massive purchases, and requested changes to legal documents that would benefit her if things ended badly. Everything Christy had warned about had come true. Security reports that had been dismissed as exaggerations now matched witness testimony. Bodyguards described scenes of emotional ambushes, late-night confrontations, and possessiveness that they had never seen with Johnny's previous partners. The pattern was consistent and undeniable. And when people suggested maybe those warnings were just jealousy or overprotectiveness, the evidence told a different story. These weren't people who opposed Johnny's relationships. They had supported him through all of them. Winona Ryder, Kate Moss, Vanessa Paradis. No one had ever raised alarms like this before. By the time Johnny finally saw the truth, the damage was irreversible. His relationship with his daughter had fractured. Lily Rose reportedly felt betrayed, like her father had chosen a stranger over his own family. Vanessa, who had tried to protect him not for herself, but for their children, grew distant. Even Christy, who had been his rock for decades, pulled away, emotionally exhausted from trying to save him from himself. Professionally, it was even worse. His reputation was destroyed. Studios distanced themselves, projects were canceled, and the public, for a time, turned against him. The people who had warned him, his lawyers, his PR team, his managers, could only watch as he lost everything they had helped him build. And financially, the fallout was devastating. Amber's legal battles, settlements, and access to his accounts cost him millions. But Johnny's confession wasn't about money. It was about the people he'd hurt by refusing to listen. When he finally spoke about it privately in 2023, the man who had once been Hollywood's most untouchable star sounded broken but clear. He didn't blame Amber. He blamed himself for not listening. The source who was in that room said Johnny's eyes were distant, his voice almost a whisper when he said, I didn't just lose a marriage. I lost faith in everyone who loved me because I chose someone who didn't love me at all. Those words are haunting because they carry a truth that goes beyond celebrity scandals. They speak to something universal. The people who love us most aren't always the ones who tell us what we want to hear. Sometimes they're the ones who try to protect us from what we refuse to see. And when we ignore them, the cost isn't just heartbreak, it's losing the foundation that keeps us grounded. Johnny's story isn't just about betrayal or fame, it's about pride. About thinking you can see something no one else can. About wanting to believe you're right, even when everyone you trust is saying you're wrong. His confession, I should have listened to everyone, isn't just about Amber Heard. It's about the human need to be right, even when it destroys us. Every warning Vanessa gave came true. Every concern Christy documented was proven. Every fear his security voice became a headline. Every discomfort his daughter expressed turned out to be justified. They weren't jealous. They weren't controlling. They were trying to protect him. And he ignored them all. The real tragedy of Johnny Depp's story isn't that he fell for someone manipulative. It's that he had an entire circle of people who saw it coming and tried to stop it. And he didn't listen. His confession, years later, isn't about anger. It's about finally accepting that love isn't blind. Pride is. Maybe that's why his words resonate so deeply, because we've all ignored warnings. We've all wanted to believe that our hearts knew better than the people who loved us. Johnny just lived that mistake on the biggest stage in the world, and when he finally admitted it, when he said, they all saw it coming, it wasn't just a confession, it was a warning. Maybe he wasn't just talking about the past. Maybe he was warning anyone caught in the same blindness he once lived through. Because if everyone who loves you is saying the same thing, it's not noise, it's truth trying to save you. And ignoring it, as Johnny Depp finally learned, can cost you everything. So now the question isn't about whether Johnny's confession was real or just another performance. The real question is, how many of us would have done the same thing? How many of us would have chosen pride over love, blindness over truth? Maybe his story isn't just about him. Maybe it's about all of us, and the warnings we refuse to hear until it's far too late.